Welcome to Love Always Self, a podcast about connection to self, reflections of self, and how this impacts our reality.
We're all about trying to find balance, discovering tools for spiritual wellness, and creating a safe place to have loving conversations about a broad range of topics.
I'm Karista, an energy healer with a background in Reiki, nursing, health coaching, and personal training. I have a holistic mindset and believe that everyone and everything can work together in harmony so that we can create more balanced life experiences.
And I'm Shira, a spiritual intuitive and explorer of personal truth with a background in management and finance. I feel we are all connected and guided by our own spiritual team, whom I refer to as Mount Glass, and I want to help teach you how to connect with yours.
We believe we're all connected, and by learning to love self, we will elevate the collective consciousness and learn to create deeper connections with each other, self, and source. As we grow and learn through our own life adventures and self-discoveries, we hope you gain insights into your own truth.
Don't forget to subscribe to stay notified of new content, and we hope you enjoy the show. Hello. Welcome to Love Always Self. I'm Shira.
Hi, I'm Karista, and thank you so much for joining us for our special limited series, The People's Journey.
Whoop, whoop. And today we have a longtime friend, RJ. He is a first generation of Lebanese parents escaping a war. He specializes in neuropsychopharmacology from the University of Texas in San Antonio, with a continued interest in how substances affect the mind and behavior. He currently lives in California, where he continues his career in the private investment sector. Welcome, RJ.
Hi.
Thank y'all for having me. I'm still blushing.
Well, we're super grateful to have you.
Well, thank you.
I'm still digging the onesie you've got on, which of course is a Buc-ee's, right? It's from Buc-ee's.
I gotta represent.
Bucky's the Beaver.
So if you're listening and you're not here in Texas, Buc-ee's is a pretty infamous, very large gas station, to be honest with you. I don't even know if you can call it a gas station. I mean,
It's like a shopping mall of gas stations.
Right.
The Galleria of gas stations.
Every treat you can possibly imagine, you can get there. It's amazing.
And socks.
And
And apparently onesies.
Awesome. So RJ, thank you again for joining our People's Journey. This is going to be a very fascinating conversation. And what we look for, honestly, is just to kind of talk about where you are in life and how you got there. So why don't you start off by talking to us about, like, maybe how did you get to a point where you were even interested in the subject of spirituality? What happened that caused you to go onto this path?
I would say, and as cliche as it sounds, it's just death. Experience death from a young age and throughout life. I think most people, my age or our age, they don't really feel the pain of death until like mid to late 30s or maybe 40s, if hopefully that their family members and friends are healthy. I'm going to say fortunately had the experience of death at a really early age. And I say that now because my journey has led me to believe that death is a beautiful thing and death is not the end. And having those passings, I don't call them losses, because you don't lose souls. You lose the human body, the vessel that is meant for the soul, but you don't lose that actual essence. And I think just going through university and studying what I've studied and experience what I experienced in my personal life is like two worlds collided, like science and like religion or spirituality. And I started connecting the dots, and some things started making a lot of sense. And now more than ever, we have actual like bona fide science that backs up the spiritual world. And we have these famous authors and researchers and scientists. It's very, very interesting to see people with some like credibility and some, with some like backing that can actually write books and speak their minds, and people will follow, because before it wasn't a conversation we could have with one another. So I would say that it was death that started it first. And probably started with Uncle John when I was about like 11 or 12. That was that was a rainy day in Austin, Texas. And I just knew something was off. Just went to Lebanon, came back, and mom and I were driving down 35, and it was just started storming out of nowhere. As you know, like Texas weather, just one day sunlight, and then the next freaking hour, rain.
Boom.
Like,
Yeah.
something just chilled me to the bones, though, and I started crying, and my mom got a call from Lebanon saying Uncle John like fell down a mountainside.
Oh, wow.
He passed away. And like these, as a young lad, it's hard to process that, especially when you don't have people around you who really have processed it themselves, and it kind of just like carries over like generation. Like I think a lot of parents forget that children just absorb everything they see around them. So how they respond to environmental stimuli is how they're going to respond. That's why some people in your life have anger issues, or some people in your life have very like compassionate like responses to certain like traumatic events or whatnot, because that's how their parents were, or they learned it from somebody they respected, in their lives. And I would say that learning, like being in neuropsychopharmacology and understanding how the brain works when people digest certain substances, really made me want to delve into like what happens with like on your final moments of your life, because there's so much of a neurochemical dump when you actually pass. People say they see the light, or they see the light flash before their eyes, and all that stuff. And the mind itself is it's false that people used to say that we only use like whatever percentage of our brain. That's not true. Like we use all of our brain. All of our brain is active. We just don't understand all of it. And I really believe that you have these three components of, you got your conscious mind, your unconscious mind, your subconscious mind. And the unconscious mind really, it's sort of like your fight and flight. It's those natural reactions you have. It's like that sometimes that feeling you get or whatnot. And I don't remember what article this was, but recently I read that 95% of our brain like processing ability is actually not our conscious mind. It's our subconscious mind, which makes you really think about everything you do in life. So that means 5% of everything that we do, like right now I'm speaking, I have this decision to speak and to move my hands and to blush or whatever, or to like take off this onesie because it's getting really hot. And these are all this would work if you're cold, by the way. Unless you pitch these in Michigan or something. Like that's only 5% of our brain power. It's a conscious mind, which i.e. ego. And people, I think, have this misconception of ego. It gets sometimes a bad rep because you think like, egocentric or like conceited or narcissistic and stuff like that. But it's not. Ego is what controls you. It's what helps you control your everyday life, like what you want to do. If you're hungry, you want a burger, you want whatever the heck it is. That's all part of your ego telling you like, that's what we want. Let's go do it, right? So it's really fascinating to learn that 95% of our brain, actually like what our brain does every moment of waking and lives when we're awake and when we're slumbering, is our subconscious mind. And that part of our brain, I want to say, is connected to you and I, or
the collective,
whatever people in whatever part of the world, or whatever animal. Like people have these spirit animals, and there's a reason why people feel connection with certain things in this world they can't explain. Or when you meet that person, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so like head over heels for this person. There's a reason why you feel that way, and it all comes from the subconscious mind. And there's these energy sources out there, like Joe Dispenza talks about it, and there's a lot of people out there who talk about these kind of things. There's another guy I really like. He used to be the host of that show, Brain Games.
I know what you're talking about, but I can't remember the name of the guy.
He's really great to follow too. Gosh, I don't know why his name is slipping my mind, but like there's a lot of people out there who talk about this, and they're quantifying it with empirical science, which is beautiful. So that really what got me into like very interested. It started with the whole death thing and trying to explain death and what it means. And then obviously like the existential questions of like, why we're here and what is this universe or multiverse that we're a part of, and like how small we are in the grand scheme of things. So then I got down the road of like meditation and just researching different like plants and just how animal behavior, everything, human behavior. I mean, at the end of the day, humans are just animals. I mean, we've been civilized for a couple hundred years. That's it. So I remind people when humans do very unfathomable things that at the end of the day, we're just animals living on this rock. It makes sense. It makes sense if you think of it that way. So you can't really get upset. But yeah, so it started with death, and I mean it's a ever long journey. It's never going to stop, even after I pass. I think it's one of those things where you take your lessons onto another life or another world, and then you get recycled into the whole ball of energy we call the cosmos or whatnot.
The circle of life is so much more in depth than we originally imagined.
It's very much is, yes. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, no, that totally answers my question. I definitely find that everyone's journey to, I'm going to use the words awakening, right? Which is just waking up to the point where you're wanting to start asking questions about yourself, right? You want to learn more. You're not just on this like auto programming of I'm a human being and I have to dress this way and I have to do this kind of a job and I work these hours and then I build a house and I start a family and then I just, like to me that is, just the very monotonous part of us being humans versus the capabilities of what we really have in stored for us and what we really can expand to and become aware of, right? And there's a lot of things that lead people to get to that point. And there's a lot of things that sometimes people can go through these types of starting to ask questions procedures with, they just simply had a question, right? And they didn't have to, and those are the lucky ones that didn't have anything traumatic that happened to them that, brought them to that state of awareness that they started diving down that rabbit hole. And then there's some of us that have had traumatic experiences that led us to, get to that point, right? And it sounds to me, based on your story that you had a traumatic experience and that's what kind of pushed you into wanting to start asking questions. What is this all about?
Yeah.
And then that always leads to, okay, what am I capable of? What else is there?
And I also think like in our world too, and even like some of the big New York Times columnists will admit it, it's so much easier to share bad news than good news, and there's a lot of negative news out there, negative energy and just negative like reactions toward things that we know of, but we don't see a lot of the positive light or positive energy. And I'll admit, like when I was a teenager and after a few of those passings, I was a mortified and very depressed person. I was confused. My mom worked her butt off to support for 4 children, like middle school education. So she didn't have help. And she didn't understand emotions like that. I mean, she grew up in the mountains in a village of like 20 people. Coming to a country like this with all these like different like energies being bombarded at you at all times, you couldn't go to her for those kind of things. And to be frank, and I'm not timid to admit this. Like when I was a little kid, like a lot of the kids, I had suicidal tendencies and thoughts because of the confusion and the disruption. And then I remember learning about Carl Maslow and his hierarchy of needs. And just something switched when I was about 16 years old. Something switched in my brain. Like you cannot keep on bringing yourself down. Like that is just so disrespectful to your body, mind, and soul. Like God, or whatever you want to call God or whatever you want to believe God is, it's just a noun. So like people freak out about that word. But whatever God is to you, or whatever you praise or think whenever a miracle happens, that entity or deity created me and creates all of us. And we are here for a reason. We might not understand it now, but we will understand it at a certain point in our lives or our next life. Or, I believe in reincarnation, which is not what Maronite Catholics do. That's what I was raised. But your next life can be in the past, because time is non-existent when you're in the afterlife, and it's all put there for us to learn lessons. And in one of my meditative episodes, I was with this energy entity that I call God. And it was such a warm and secure feeling. It,
Wow.
it didn't have any type of structure. It just felt like this warm white ball of light right behind my left ear the whole time. And yeah, I was I was in an out of body experience. I was traveling the cosmos, and eventually, like long story short, eventually I ended up just floating in the middle of space. And
Wow.
have you seen the movie Doctor Strange?
Yeah. Where
So sometimes I think these movie writers like and these comic book developers or creators like Stan Lee, I think they're beyond human sometimes. I really do. Like some of like the movie Avatar. I mean, it has so many like hidden meanings to it.
Yes.
So much truth behind like the whole story and the tree, and there's science behind that too. Like that tree, like trees and the mycelium network and all that stuff. We can talk about that later. I really feel like these people have been touched by like angels or some extraterrestrial force or energy, or they've seen it somehow or like witnessed it. And there's a scene in Doctor Strange where he's fighting at the end. He's fighting the destroyer of the worlds, and he's on like that sphere, and it's this huge like gaseous entity or whatever it is. And I had one glimpse of God. It was that scene, and I was just an astronaut running like on this neon sphere, like kind of think about Tron, like the whole
Yeah.
so the sphere I'm not running actually, the sphere is spinning. So I'm just kind of running in place. And in front of me is that, and I'm sure this is like the fabrication of my mind because I've seen this movie and that's how I like connect what a God would look like. It would look like the destroyer of worlds. So at first, like my heart rate starts going up. I'm like, oh goodness, what's going on? And God tells me, it's like, I am not destroyer of the worlds. I am the creator of worlds.
Wow. I just
And
got goosebumps.
Point, yeah, it's so wild. And at that point, like I just kind of launched in outer space and I'm floating there, just like in my astronaut suit. And I'm looking out into all the cosmos. And it's almost like God leans over into my ear, and in my left ear, he says, God is love and love is God. And going through like mass, and I'm sure when people go to church, people have heard that phrase so many times, like repeatedly, and I never really understood what it meant. And I talked to one of my life coach shamans about this, and it was he's never heard anything like this before, but it makes so much sense to me, at least, and to him. But there was this painting in his office, and the painting is all red, and in the middle is this black. It's black, but the black is the shape of a heart. And then it's not just all black. There's like little white dots. So it's like the cosmos, like stars. And he told me it took like 4 or 5 years. He had a vision of that. And it took him about 4 to 5 years to find an artist to paint it accurately to his spec. And I remember looking at that during my journey, because I kind of like snap out of it. I look at it and I delve back into my meditative state. And God whispers to me, he goes, God is love, love is God. And it finally clicked to me what that meant. And he explains, like, I didn't even have to explain it to myself. Like it's like a voice in my head that just said, God is love. I am all the love in this whole wide multiverse or universe or whatever you want to call it. There's so much love within me that God itself could not contain it. So then I exploded. What we call the Big Bang. And it said that I created all what you see in front of you. And all this is love, from the quasars to the suns, to the meteorites, to you, to Earth, to the plants, to the trees. All of it is a part of me, all of it. And it's like in planet Earth is where parts of pieces of me, what I call your soul, your essence, it's not like a playground, but it's like your trials and tribulations to become pure again. So one thing that's why I'm not afraid of death. So one thing death is sort of like a reset. Like when you or I have gotten to a point in this journey of our lives that either we've learned all we could or we got stuck. God takes us from here and he reincarnates us into something else that helps us basically purify our souls, because what he or she or it is trying to do is pick up the pieces of itself and make itself whole again. And if you ever read the short story, some people call it a poem, it's called The Egg by Andy Weir. It's only
Mm,
about a 7 minute read, I think.
yeah.
It's it's an incredible little story. And Andy Weir, I think, is one of those individuals, the same thing. I think he's been touched or seen something that, you know, through meditation or whatnot, that has showed him the truth. And he discusses that too, is that we get reincarnated into different vessels, like our hands and our eyes and our ears. They're all just tools for us. We're all God. We're all godlike. So it's for us to go amongst this world and interact with one another and spread love and not hatred, and, you know, try to mind yourself and respect and understand, and just try to make the world a better place. And also at the same time create this holistic, like, essence within you, what people call heart, you know, heart and soul. To me, that's God. Shira, you're a part of God. Carrie, you're a part of God. We're all part of this existential ultimate energy called God. And he's just trying to collect it. And what's really fascinating is, like, in the Marvel,
Beautiful.
it's, thank you. And then you think about, like, stories like Thor and like Asgard. Like, what is Asgard? That's heaven. That's heaven. Like, you know, Thor is a demigod, and he was born into it, but that's the whole, like, analogy of it. But we're all, in a sense, are demigods. We just haven't tapped into our full potential. And every time we get reincarnated, it's for us to learn our lessons. There's another book. It's an amazing book. I think I've mentioned this to y'all before. Many Lives, Many Masters by Brian Weiss.
I actually
And
read that
isn't that
recently. It was
amazing?
so good.
It's really good. And it's just like, in one flight, you can knock it out. And you get off that plane and you're just tingling, like you just need to pray to something. Like, it's facts. I mean, he has all this on documentation, recording. And, you know, that lesson of, like, hey, when you get reincarnated, you're taking all your dirt with you, because it's your job to cleanse yourself. But you don't remember it. But that's what our subconscious mind is. Our subconscious mind is the recollection of all our past lives or future lives and all the things that we've experienced out of this world. And of course, it's not our conscious mind, so we can't just, like, draw from memory. But that's why when people, like, meditate, or they, like, you know, do certain plant medicines, they tap into that realm, or that part of your mind that opens up a whole new world. And to me, it's not dream. Those are not dreams. Those are memories. I mean, I've experienced people next to me that have gone through some really, really intense journeys, and I'm 100%. I know those are, like, past lives for these people. I mean, it's just too real, because those are not.
I've
Those are
actually
not
had a
fallible.
PLR in a past life regression session. And when you were explaining, it felt pretty validating when you were explaining the Doctor Strange piece, like when he starts traveling and he's kind of going through that, like, wormhole like. So I experienced that during my past life regression. So, and I've heard this before, and there's no way you can take this many people that have had the very similar experience and say that, oh, you know, you just made that up or whatever, right? Like, it's not possible. I believe it's true. And one thing I really, really connected with is your, you know, that feeling of love when you had that experience of feeling that, you know, God presence behind you, and then the whispering to you, and you just knew. It's like this overwhelming knowing. You just know, and you believe it to your core. It's so amazing.
Yeah, yes, it is. And it's hard to really believe it or get behind it until you experience it yourself, you know?
Yep. Agreed.
Growing up in
Agreed.
Texas, you know, I was just this tough old, you just see these, like, hippies, you're like, whatever, hippie, you know, whatever. You're just dumb, hippie. But it's not. I mean, there's a lot more to it, if you allow it to happen to you. You know, it's hard to allow your ego, you know, to take a break. And I've had many of ego deaths. And the challenging thing is too, when you go through these experiences, you think like, oh, I'm going to be a different, better person or whatever it is from now on. No, it's kind of like when you're in your car going 80 miles an hour in a 65-mile-per-hour zone. You don't really remember that you're speeding until you get a speeding ticket. And then you like behave for like whatever, a month or 2 months, and then you're speeding again. So it's kind of one of these things where it's a continuous exercise. Like your ego comes back and says, hey man, like we're going to do things my way again, So for those people that have dedicated their lives like meditation and just self-development, it's just remarkable. It's just as difficult, I say, as running a Fortune 500 company. It's demanding. It's not easy. It's work, but it's incredible. It's very much incredible.
Something you said early on, about beginning to understand like the purpose of death and the beauty behind death, and how you are no longer afraid of passing from your physical experience. I would love to understand like the path that you took to get there.
Yes. As I mentioned earlier, it started with, experiencing death early on, just being confused about it and trying to understand it, because I'm one of those people that I overanalyze everything. It's kind of unhealthy sometimes. I spent there on Amazon forever trying to figure out the best of the best or whatever, but I overanalyze everything, and I always try to find a reasoning for everything. And one reason why I got out of mathematics, I didn't tell you all that before, but I used to be really, really great at math. And it was until like when I was in junior year, I was in calculus in high school, and we're trying to learn proofs, and proofs not fun. And each answer takes like a page and a half, 2 pages. And I'm sitting there asking my teacher all these like fundamental questions, like, well, why is this? And why is that? And she just puts her hand on my shoulder and goes, Rich, stop asking why. Just get the answer and pass. Like, if you want to learn that, if you want to ask the question, go get your PhD. Go get your PhD. That's what you're supposed to do when you're a doctorate of this, to like ask these and get like explanations of why these things are what they are. So just asking all these questions of why this happened to the good die young. Nobody could understand that. Like, why does this happen? I understand it because I believe that God needs angels, and angels are people who are the part of God, that going back to like your soul, your heart, your energy is godlike. Going back to that, when someone is on this planet and has satisfied what their life is meant to satisfy, God knows it, and God takes you from this place because you have to go to your next class. It's time for you to graduate whatever semester and get on to the next semester and take another course. So I think I think I'm in about 40 something people passed in my life. And I say past for a reason because it's another dimension. But I think a lot of those, I believe God set in place to get me ready for the one that happened 6 years ago, which was my best friend and my sister. And I couldn't even talk about that one for a long time. It took me at least 4 years to talk about it without crying. And I'm about to right now, but the hardest thing was me holding. I had her in my arms when she drew her last breath on this planet. And to feel like her life force just come out as breath and just vanish into the atmosphere. I mean, it crushed me. It crushed me. And then I realized not only are people taken from this planet early for a reason that we can't understand until we meet God or whatever you want to believe in. Those experiences have a chain reaction with everyone around that person. And that's why it's really hard for me sometimes to understand why. I understand why people commit suicide. I do. And who knows? I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that's an act of God too, and in some weird, conniving way. But that chain reaction has in other people. And I try to remind people that go through that pain, like, this happened for a reason. This is meant to take you off the path that you're on because you're not on the right path, and give you another path that you're meant to be on. So you need to like really analyze it and figure out why. Because when people pass, of course, they leave trails of like love behind, and also, I mean, a little bit of madness too. But when my sister passed, it really made me believe that the good die young for a reason, that God is fighting a war. And we see that even in science with like a lot of physicists, they have this theory of antimatter. And there's a concern that antimatter is consuming the actual matter in space. And who's to say that maybe antimatter is just like the negative, evil energy of our world or the universe, and matter is the positive light? Because you always have to have two, right? And 2 is my lucky number. 2 is an existence. I mean, look at our bodies. We have 2 of everything, just about, right? It's a symmetrical line here, and it's identical. It's just a copy of it. And 2 to me is required for life to exist. I mean, you don't have existence without equal parts chaos and peace. The yin and yang, hot and cold, protons and neutrons or electrons. You have just life in general does not exist without opposing forces, and you have to have that balance to create harmony.
Polarity.
So when I read their like scientists, and who knows, it's just a theory. Everything in science is a theory, even gravity. Like, if I take my hat off and drop it on the floor, gravity is just theory. One day we might debunk it. Who knows? It might be called something else. I think people forget that sometimes, especially nowadays with this whole like crazy dilemma we got going on with like the pandemic and the vaccines and stuff. But when I read stuff about like a tip in the balance, and like same thing with like climate change or whatever it is, and people are like, oh my gosh, like we're all gonna kill ourselves. You know what? I do my part. I try to recycle. I try to take the shortcut so I'm not in my car as long, whatever it is. At the end of the day, I think there's something much greater than us, that like planet Earth, Mother Nature will fix herself. Just regardless of what we do. I think we're going to be fine regardless. A good example of this is there's like 6, I forgot what they call them, but it's basically in the ocean where like the cross currents connect, and they're so large that that's where all the trash collects. So they had these like plastic islands in the middle of the ocean. I think the largest one's between Hawaii and Japan or something like that, or Indonesia or whatnot. And it's a massive island of plastic, and that's disgusting, right? And this article basically said like, well, look at the bright side of things. It creates an ecosystem for like different, I don't know if they're crustaceans or what they are, but different like creatures that can't live that far out in the ocean because they're more along the shoreline, and they're thriving and surviving on these plastic islands. So I just started thinking to myself, like, Mother Nature has a way of balancing it all out.
That is very interesting. That's an interesting perception towards that as well, right? Like, because isn't there a kid that's like recently solved this, like the cleaning up the ocean? I'm gonna have to look that up because I kind of just put that in there, not having all the facts. But yeah, somebody created some big thing, and it's supposedly this kid. And I'm just like, oh my God, these younger generations are so gonna outdo us. But yeah, it's incredible. But I've never thought of that aspect of it, honestly. Like that's wild.
There's 2 sides to every coin, right?
Yeah. God,
Yeah.
3.
Yeah. You can just have one of those Jamies like Joe Rogan has. We're like, look it up. And he's like, looks it up and put it on a screen for you.
Right?
Yeah. So I kind of derailed there, but yeah, you were asking how I got to where I am from like my experience in the path, or what was my turning point. It was, I mean, every passing or every hardship of my life, I wanted to self-actualize. So self-actualization, even when you do self-actualize, you become this like perfect holistic being, or what you think is what makes you happy, and you're 100% like, I don't know how to put it, but you're there. But whatever happens in your life, some traumatic, good or bad, it changes you. It's just like being a doctor. Like you always have to go get like credits every year to keep up with the latest and greatest medicine, right? So your mind will shift gears whenever something happens to you, and it could be something even small. I mean, even falling in love does this to people too. I'm not saying that small is huge, but even like beautiful things like that changes who you are. Even if you self-actualize, you got to re-self-actualize. And every time like a death, and I'm using death as an example because it's just everyone experiences it. I would sit myself down and say, what does this mean to you? And I mean, it's not about like, why did this happen to this person or why does it happen to me? Like, what does this mean? And how can you use this to better yourself and help people around you? And sometimes it's hard to keep up with it because it is work. It's a lot of work. But I mean, I do that after every bad decision in investments or anytime, when I was in school and I failed an exam. If people just would sit themselves down and just take 10 deep breaths in or take a walk and let their emotions subside and just think consciously what that event in their life or how it affected them and what they're going to do about it for like the greater good, it gets you one step closer of getting where you need to be. And sure, there's a lot of people out there who have mental illnesses, and it's something that I think, especially our country, needs to talk about more. It creates a lot of problems. And medicine can't help those people, at least not like, modern day pharmaceutical medicine. They can just, all it is sweeping the problem under the rug,
Or adding new side effects.
Yeah. And there's a lot of research out there that always the placebo effect. Oh my goodness. Like, so many people can heal themselves just with believing they've been healed. I mean, I can tell you stories about like surgeries and stuff where people never got surgery and they went about their lives like they had it. And 2 years later, like, hey, by the way, psych, you never got surgery. That's all your grandson because you believed you did. But
that was a Tic Tac.
Sorry, I kind of get off on tangents a lot, but yeah, my sister's passing was definitely, I thought I was there before that happened. Like when I learned she had cancer at 32, I was like, oh, she's gonna get through this. It's not a problem, no big deal. Because at that point in my life, right when I turned like 30-ish, I was extremely happy. I was so optimistic that nothing wrong or disfavorable could happen in my life. So I was like, oh, she got this. And there's something to say about that kind of energy. Like when people are ill, and people like prayer, for instance, people call it prayer in the religious, in the religious world. But if people just pass on good vibes or good well wishes to people, or just really show their support and love, those people actually recover faster and survive things they should not have survived or come out better. And they even do that with plants. There's research on plants. They pray for plants across the world. They meditate and think about these plants and give it like good, what people want to say, good vibes or good energy, or they pray for them and they grow greener, stronger, and better fruit or whatnot. So there's something to say about that. But I was so optimistic at that point in my life that I didn't think anything bad would happen to her. And it did. And then it happened. And it destroyed me. But it made me realize, like, I'm not done yet. I'm not done yet. And our Creator has done this for a reason. And my sister was an amazing soul. And that's what was so hard about it. She would have been an amazing mother. I know she would have raised great kids for, to help this world and future generations. But it was not her time. There was something that she learned early, and she was not able to actually share that lesson with people and with her vessel that she had in this life. So she needed to be reincarnated into somebody else or something else to make that difference.
And who's to say that she didn't already experience being a mom and doing some pretty phenomenal things in different lifetimes already, right? Maybe those things are running kind of on a parallel side. And then you can also think about the catalyst that took place from her passing that even pushed you. And that could have been an agreement that you two had, that this traumatic experience is going to be for you, RJ, and for those that loved me, and allow you to do things that will help so many people. It's incredible just the impact you have on an individual that you smile at when passing by or you're just polite to. And if you think of an act that's that small, that actually has a trickle effect in everything that happens throughout their day now, And then you think about what your sister has created in your heart and the hearts of those that love her, and how that's now spread out so far with all the great things that you are doing with your life and that your family's doing and her friends and so on and so forth. And it just keeps growing and going.
It's almost like contagious. It really
Right.
is. It's sort of like when you buy in the holiday season, when people buy the people behind them something, they buy the people behind them
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
It's like that all the time. People need to be more charitable. And it's not just about like money. And I think it's society, kind of makes people believe like you got to have like this big house, this fast car, and all this stuff. And sure, those are nice things and those are fun, but that's the wrong kind of attention. It's science. People are much happier when they're charitable, when they help out other people. It doesn't have to be something big. Like to be frank, I don't really give to Red Cross because that money's not going to those people 100%. I'd rather personally give it to somebody or do something with my own two hands. I realize how charitable I am because I do put people first, which sometimes is very taxing, but it's just part of the thoughtfulness nature. But I was reading Joe Dispenza's, I'm currently reading one of his books, and I went to, I met a bunch of friends in Mexico and, had a fun time with them, a lot of love, like, people from all over the world came together like in Mexico, and it was really cool to have all this like colliding energy, and it just existed so perfectly. It was such a beautiful thing. Now I'm on this plane back to California and I'm reading Joe's book, and airplane, like the noise of the humming and stuff, like repetitive, that make me drowsy. It makes me sleepy.
Yeah. It's like a box fan.
I'm trying to read, like people think I'm drunk. I'm like, I'm getting all drowsy, and I'm like, okay, I gotta take a break. It's been like an hour. But the last like paragraphs that I read in his book were about he's an expert in what he does, but he's talking about how troublesome it is to meditate. Like it's very difficult. So like never give up. Like even if it's just 5 minutes, I can't silence my mind for more than 20 seconds. I can't. And I've tried and tried and tried, but that's fine. Because then you catch yourself, you stop, and you start over again. You breathe, you do it again. And that is still meditation. Or even if you take a little 5 or 10 minute power nap, as long as you turn your phone off and just sit there in peace, or maybe listen to some relaxing music, that's considered meditation. Give your brain a break. On busy days, if on top of every hour, if I'm overloaded, I stop for 5 minutes. I just take a break and I breathe. And I was sitting there, I'm like, okay, I'm getting tired. Let me just take like a 5 minute nap, or like just meditate for 5 minutes. And I was lucky enough to have the whole row to myself. So I kicked my feet up and I put the book down in a sleeve or whatever by the chair in front of me. And I just closed my eyes and leaned my head against the window. And Shira, I can't tell you, I've never experienced something like this in my life. Even if I tried everything and you put it in a blender and I chugged it, instantaneously, it was felt like, it was probably in our world, it's probably like a couple minutes, 3 or 4 minutes, but I closed my eyes and I was in this white room, and there's this woman in front of me, maybe 10, 15 feet in front of me, sitting Indian style, sitting down on her butt Indian style with her back toward me. And I'm just standing there and I don't say anything, but she read my mind. She goes, yeah, you're here right now. And she turns around, and what I've heard is like when you dream and you dream of people, you don't see their faces. I don't know if that's true or not. Have you experienced anything like that? Like, have you actually seen
Sometimes.
people's faces?
I've seen
Yeah.
people's faces.
Maybe there's a meaning behind when you actually do see people's faces, but every time I remember or I recollect like dreams in the past, I don't remember people's faces. I know who they are. They don't have a face. And this woman turns around. It's kind of like, puts her hand back like this on the floor, and she turns around like that. And she goes, oh, about time you get here. And it was my sister.
I was going to say it was your sister.
I know, and I try to remind like everyone in my life, like she's still here. I know she's still here. Her energy is still here. And it was just like I was having this, like, it was so vivid. It was real. It was so vivid. It was real. And she's just talking to me. She's like, I really miss you. And it was like, cliche things, of course, like, I really miss you. Tell everyone I love them, yada, 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 yada. And when I knew this was real is when she goes, you want to hear something funny? because she tells me she used to, when we were kids, she used to like pop my blackheads. I know it's so gross, but she loved to like, we used to, like every night I'll go into her bedroom and we'll just lay down and talk, and she'll just like, you know, work on my face. Probably why I have such flawless skin. Check it out. And we really bonded over those moments. And she's like, I really miss popping your blackheads and all this stuff, blah, blah. I really miss like just talking to you, and like I love you so much. And I'm over here on this plane like crying, like I was just like sobbing. And you got this big 220-pound bearded dude like on a plane. And at that moment, my ego kicks in. It's like, this, no, wake up, dude. This is BS, dude. You're looking like a fool. And my eyes start fluttering. And this is when I knew it was real, because my eyes start fluttering and I start seeing my legs in front of me. And I look at the people in the row next to me, and they're looking at me like, are you okay, man? Like, I'm on this journey, right? And then I hear a voice in my head. It's my sister. She goes, what are you doing? She's like, get back here. She's like, you know how long I waited for you here? Because in her reality, her realm, a few seconds is like 20 years here, you know? So she's like, she's waited. Like, she's like, you know how long I've waited here for you to show up? You know how long you waited to be here? Like, get back here. And I close my eyes, and she goes, well, she's like, good. That's what I thought. Like, she has a little sass.
Yeah, she's sassy.
That's when I knew it was real. Because then she goes, you want to hear something funny? And this is her like showing me that this is not just a dream. I was definitely connected to her wherever she is. And she goes, you want to hear something funny? I go, what? And she goes, my father passed when I was 16, when she was like 18. And he was a challenging man, to say the least. And he was from a village in Lebanon too, like in the mountains. And she goes, Dad's still here. What do you mean? So people call it purgatory, some people call it a void or whatever, but it's a waiting room. It's a waiting room for God to tell you, like, hey, I know where I'm going to put you next. Like, this is where you need to be to try to learn your lessons so you can become more godlike, so I can have you back at home, which we call heaven, or what some people call heaven. She goes, Dad is still here. I'm like, what do you mean? It's been like freaking 18 years. And she goes, yeah, you want to hear what's funny about it? I'm like, what? She goes, well, he thinks he'll get in good with the big man if he's a carpenter. So he's a carpenter here, because Jesus was a carpenter. And I just started laughing, like, why is that state? I'm just like laughing, like, that's dad. That's dad for you. I'm like, the sucker can't get out of like, you can't get God's like, no, you gotta wait more, man. You have a lot of lessons to learn. I gotta figure out where you need to be. Like, you're a tough one. So that's when I knew it was real. But that's those type of like experiences and like the dreams that you have, they're all connected dots. Like I advise people to like write down their dreams, or anytime you have a meditative experience or out of body experience or anything even traumatic, just write it down. Write it down what it means. And I wish I had these dreams, y'all, that it happened after my second vaccine, actually, my second shot. And I tried to avoid being a guinea pig for a long time, but I gotta eat. So I got the vaccine, and the second shot made me ill. That night I was just like sweating, had the cold, just like, you have like a mild case of COVID. And the dreams I had were so in tune with when God visited me the most recent time I had a meditative experience. And it was, what I learned was, I'm a protector. So Carrie, part of your answer is, one thing that has driven me to get where I am now is just to understand like who I am and what my purpose is, right? I think a lot of people ask that question. And there was an experience I had, and this is a really funny story. So I wrote these dreams down on a piece of paper, unfortunately, not my like tablets. I don't have it here with me. And I'm going to try to remember as much as I can, but I advise people to really write everything down. And basically I was like the Bible says, like the closer you are to God, the closer you are to temptation. There's a lot of truth in that. And some people say temptation is like the devil, evil, darkness, whatever it is. But to me, temptation is God's test to say, hey, you are now worthy to speak to me. I knew in my subconscious mind that God wanted to meet me. And I had this really, I don't want to be gross, but I had intestinal issues, right? I was in the bathroom. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
that was clear.
So God came to me while I was on the toilet. Isn't that crazy?
One of the
And I
best
knew it was
places.
God because I just started like envisioning like this dark, dark castle. And like a lot of people get scared when they have like these kind of dark thoughts or whatnot. But I knew in my heart that that was God calling to me, because you have to prove yourself. Like nothing in life is given. A lot of people these days are very entitled, and they're very like get rich quick kind of mentality. That's not what longevity is. If you want longevity in your life or something that lasts, you have to earn it. And I think that's a fundamental rule of God. Like if God wants to speak to you or come to you, you have to earn it. So I remember just like I was, in a lot of pain. And it was just in this dark, almost like Castlevania castle. And I'm traversing through this darkness, and like the doorways were Black Widow legs and like stuff that will freak people out. Like, oh hell no, like I'm not going down this. And they'll just like wake up like I'm out, done, right? Wash your hands, I'm done.
As soon as you said
And
spider, I would have been out. So it's all good.
It got so heavy that even when I opened my eyes, I was seeing things. It was wicked. It was in a good way. But I just knew, I was like, okay, there's something else. So I keep like climbing up the stairs. And at the end, and I've had friends that meditate that had the same experience. And sometimes they'll get through these doors and there's guards there, and the guards won't let them in. When I got there because I think I suffered enough during this vision that these doors open. Just tall black doors. I mean, like 50 feet tall. They open up and it was just white light. And at that moment, I lost control of my body. Like I could not control my body. And there's my bathroom is 80.
You were in the bathroom,
there's the
right?
railing right there. I'm a pretty strong guy, and my head just literally slams into the wall, like my pain I have there. And I felt like it was one of those trap doors. It just like flung me around, and my body my face was in my toilet. And I just sat there, I go, and I couldn't pick myself up. I tried. I'm like struggling to pick myself up on this handicap bar that's next to my, right there. And I'm picking myself up. And then I just lost control again. I had no power at all. None. Complete ego death. And I'm just sitting there and I'm like, my head's like, in my crotch. And I'm looking up and I go, you're such an asshole. It was God showing his might, like his power, and he's like, yes, welcome to the meeting, like now we can begin. That's how he was proven to me that like, wow, you are with the Holyfield, you're in front of me now. And long story short, like we went through this conversation, and basically what I learned was, and the part of the answer, I know it's a long-winded answer, was I wanted to be more empathetic. So I went on this journey to be more empathetic because I was raised very like hardened. And logically, I can be empathetic to people, if that makes sense. Like I can understand people's pain, what they go through, but I never really felt them. I never really felt them in my heart. So I went on this journey to really get more processing here, more of a balance, right? And God said, you're never, ever, ever going to be as empathetic as you think you will in this journey. It's like, because I need you to be a protector. I need you. You are created for a reason. You are basically a sponge for people's pain. You can handle that amount of stress and trauma. I have people like you all around the world that you need to be there for people. When people need a shoulder to cry on, you're the one. And he's right. Like I've seen some really terrible things in my life, and I keep on going. It's so fascinating. And when I had those dreams after my second injection, and I never, by the way, I seldom remember my dreams, seldom. And there's 3 dreams, and I'm so bummed that I didn't put them on my like cloud, whatever. But one of them was just like a kind of like a warm up, silly, whatever. I was running from like friends that are dressed as zombies, and like everyone's going the opposite way, and I'm telling everyone like run, and I'm laughing about it, right? I'm like, what the hell does this mean? The second dream was the most important one, and that's the one I can't remember. But the third one proves that I was with God. It was a dream of me. I knew I was like some like retired assassin or something. And I'm walking in this like house type. Yeah, so weird. And I haven't thought too much more into this. I'm sure there's more meanings behind every title and every feeling that I had in this dream. But it was so vivid. I'm walking in this like warehouse, like those garage doors that open up. And like there's like studios. Like one guy's an artist, another person's like a hairstylist. And I get to the last one. And I knew there's somebody there that wanted me to be there, but I didn't want to meet them. And I look into the third room, and as I'm looking, there's a bystander, like it's just a random guy, and he's trying to find one of these suites. I don't know, he's probably going to like go buy something. And there's these 3 gentlemen, and I knew them from my former job, and they're all assassins. And I'm like, oh crap. So I start running because they start shooting at me. And this guy gets stuck in the crossfire. So I grab him and I'm running. And the whole dream was me just running from these guys and saving this guy's life. So I was like, that's what protectors do, you know? So it was kind of like an analogy of like, hey, this is your job on this planet Earth. So to answer your question, I wanted to understand more about my purpose. And I think I'm getting pretty close to it.
That's
and I think
amazing.
people understand, it's kind of like a video game. Like you have like, you know, when you play those like multiplayer games, like one person's a nut, one person's a wizard, one person's a whatever, a necromancer. Like, I think everyone has like a theme to them, and you have to like figure it out. And even if you don't, it's not a big deal. That's what your next life is for. But once you figure it out, that's when you become successful.
Wow.
That's beautiful. I mean, this whole conversation, well, listening to you, RJ, there's so much that we resonate with, and is like, there's so much truth that we feel behind your words. So thank you so much, and for being vulnerable and being open. And I couldn't agree more that this life is a school. We're here to learn. And even though we may have deeper understandings of what death means, it doesn't mean that understanding takes away the pain of losing that physical experience of our loved ones. So thank you for this awesome share. So we have a couple more questions as we begin to wrap up. So first off, RJ, what is one piece of advice that you would now give to your younger self?
Bitcoin.
Yeah, pick one.
Rapid fire questions. There we go.
There we go. How about that? Man, one piece of advice I would give to my younger self would be to, take a walk. Take a walk. Like when things get rough, take a walk. Don't decide when your emotions are raging. Don't shun people for their mistakes, because we're all imperfect.
Oh my gosh, that's beautiful.
Take a walk on the wild side. What's that song?
And last but not least, what does self-love mean to you?
Ooh, that's a great question. Self-love to me means when you don't really, I guess you don't really care, but what other people think of you, it doesn't matter, because you love yourself to a level where you know you're doing good in this world. So when people judge you, or what kids say was throw shade or whatever, that just means they don't love themselves. So self-love is when you're at a point in your life where you can you can share it. Like self-love is when you love other people wholeheartedly. Because I always tell people, like, how do you know who to love if you don't love yourself? So when you find that person in your life that you love, and you have this harmony, that means you've loved yourself, and now you're sharing that love with other people, and that love is support. So when you become supportive and people rely on you and they can't live a day without you, that's when you know that's what self-love is. It really is, because you have to love yourself before you love other people.
Oh, that's beautiful, RJ. Thank you so much for sharing your story and for being here with us today. I really couldn't imagine the things that you've gone through just to get to where you're at, but I also couldn't imagine you being any other way. It's just imperfectly perfect. So thank you all so much for listening, and don't forget
To love first
love last.
and love always.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Hey, listener, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us in this moment. We hope you enjoyed today's episode, and we look forward to our next connection.
Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow to stay notified of new content from Love Always Self. If you have any questions or topics you'd like for us to discuss, please hit us up on any of our social media platforms linked in the show notes below.
I'm Karista,
And I'm Shira.
and until next time, remember to love first
Love last.
and love always. Love Always Self podcast is meant for entertainment purposes only. We do not make any warranties about the completeness, reliability, and accuracy of the information presented in this podcast. Any action you choose to take upon the information in this podcast is strictly done so at your own risk, and we will not be held liable for any losses and damages in connection with the use of our podcast. Any and all medical concerns should be addressed with a licensed healthcare provider, as well as any questions that may be derived from the information discussed in this podcast.